All right, and we are live this time, truly with the one and only. I don't think the earth could handle two Joe Onisick. So, Joe, welcome. This is what a wild live. Normally, we've got executives and people that we work with very closely on, and today we are going with one of the OGs, a very good friend, my business partner. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. I'm glad you're accepting of the average Joe coming on your show, and it's not just that the world couldn't handle more than one of me; it's that the world definitely doesn't need that.
I don't know, because today what I want to unpack, I was just talking with you offline, some of the ways that you have changed my thoughts on things and how incredibly, almost brutally honest you are, not just with people internally, but with your customers, with your friends, and really everyone around you. And I think that's something that is terrifying. I think it's something that a lot of people can maybe overlook the ramifications of what that can mean as far as building relationships, restoring trust, building trust, and what it means to yourself. You've talked about that a lot, about keeping promises to yourself. So maybe the world could use some more Joe Onisick. I don't know. We're gonna find out, aren't we? We're gonna find out.
Well, I guess that is a lot to unpack there. Yeah, yeah, we got a lot to work on. So how should we start?
One of the things that I want to talk about with you is the how, because I've had this awesome wild advantage of being able to see you. First you were a customer, now of course we work together, but I've had the ability to see how you use things like social media and written copy, or even just how you communicate with people, how you're so incredibly honest and the impact that that has on people. And for me, as somebody who was kind of what I call growing into myself, that seems so scary, because what if I offend people? And I think you've offended a few people in your past life, maybe. I don't know. Just
And in my
saying.
current life,
so so I want to unpack that a little bit, about how did you get there? Kind of get to the heart of the Joe Onisick that maybe other people don't know. How did you get there? Do you get scared when you have bad news you have to deliver to people? How do you conquer that? What do you do about it?
oh wow, I guess it's trying to figure out how to start with that. I think the first couple of pieces is that for me, the online presence and the rest, it might be an amplification or exaggeration of who I am, but it's not an act that gets put on, right? And I think a lot of it comes from two things about me. One, I like to push and test boundaries. Wherever those boundaries exist, especially if you give me a boundary without the why. Like if you don't tell me why
Hmm.
it exists, then I'm going to go test it and find out if it's real and if it matters. And the second side is that one of my personal ethos or core values is my own integrity, right? And so
Mhm.
my own integrity is much more important to me than how I fit in or how I'm liked or the rest. If the whole crowd's going left and my integrity says right, then I'll be the odd duck all day long. So what you see in my social media is probably an exaggeration because it's a less personal format. But it's still very tied into who and what I am. And some of it grew, I guess, organically from that. And then some of it evolved over time with some actual thought process put in. I am, surprising to most, a little bit self-aware. So I do kind of think about how I'm going to mold it and use a platform to some extent, but I'm always going to be honest and speak my mind. I think that's critical to me. It's just I don't know how to not do that.
Yeah. It's so part of your core that I see it come out, I think, even when you don't intend to, or you're not trying to push. So what walk us through that mindset. What do you do when so for instance, this happens to us more more often than I anticipated, I'll say it that way. People will hire us specifically because they know that you will say this is bad, or this is dumb, or this is not competitive at all. We should go this route. And not to say you're always right. Not to say that they always agree with us. I know. You heard it here first, folks, right? so, but but you're always willing to put yourself out there do you get scared? Do you get worried? You said that you work through some stuff in your head ahead of time. Is there like some kind of a template that you use or a mantra at all? How do you do it?
No, I think on the aspect of giving feedback that isn't necessarily positive or kumbaya or happy, to me it goes back to, I mean, a lot of different things, but you know, in the Marine Corps we train hard, and in, like, I was a Marine Corps martial arts instructor, and as a Marine Corps martial arts instructor I would go into training with the intent to get beaten up more than I would in an actual confrontation. Because the reason is, this is the safe space to do it. This is where I can do it and walk away. But if I make a mistake in the real world, I don't get to walk away from it. So to me, when we're working with a client and I'm pushing back on something, it's not competitive, or you're not taking the right angle, or the product isn't good, it's not to beat them up or say their product management is bad or their marketing's bad. It's because we're in this safe space. We're in this bubble. Once we get out in front of the market and the analysts and Wall Street and the customers, that safe space is gone. So if we can put our dirty laundry on the table here and figure it out, whether I'm right or wrong, we know going in that we're better off, but we also know where those hits are going to come from. And so I'm always looking at it the same way I did when I was accessing bringing technology into a practice at a VAR or using a technology at a customer. I'm going to be hypercritical of it and make you answer every little detail and every question until I know I can use it. And if you can get through that, we'll buy it, or we'll use it, or we'll sell it. And so I just kind of reapply that when we're working with clients to try and get all of that out of the way. At worst, we defend it. Everything was great. And now we know the arrows that are going to get shot. So we know what to be defending against.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard you say a couple things there that I'm like, we got to point those out. That can't get lost. One, and I think it tracks perfectly with your ethos of just integrity first. And that's, you come with a good heart. You're coming saying, this is what's best for you. You hired me to do this. And everyone right now and have been trying to figure out, how do I be this trusted advisor? And I think that's part of your secret sauce is you're the trusted advisor because they know that you're going to give them the answer that they need to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear. And I think when you approach something like that, it comes off more gentle. It comes off more sincere and authentic, which I think, you know, you're certainly known as being one of the most authentic people in our space, for sure. But the other thing that you said is that you're creating a safe space for there to be this discourse and conversations and to have this back and forth because you're anticipating what's coming ahead. And I think that's part of what especially executive leadership does so well. When you really have a great leader, they're able to look at the now and ahead. And I think those are both things that you just intuitively do. And that are core strength for yours. But also, I think that's what's behind your brand and why it comes off the way it does, because it could easily come off as a flippant jerk where you're just a jerk and, you know, you don't know any better. So how do you walk that line? And is it partially because I might be answering my own question here, but you're right a lot. Let's call it like it is. As much as I like to give you a hard time and, you know, on Tech Deck Karaoke, say things to kind of, you know, get the guests to give you a hard time. You're right a lot of times. An enormous amount of times where sometimes I'm just floored. And I've joked that I'm pretty sure you are Chat GPT. But how is that part of it? How do you toe the line between, I'm being very honest, because the other thing I don't hear you say to customers or clients is, hey, I'm going to say something you don't want to hear. Or I'm going to say something that might be kind of brutal. I don't hear you say that. So do you couch it some other way? Or how do you build that safe space?
Oh, that is another big one to unpack. I think I don't try and sugarcoat or soften the blows because it can feel disingenuous, or it can lessen the impact that you're trying to make. So I try not to do that. And to say what I say without doing that, you got to build trust. And so when you come to building trust, one of the things I always tell sellers is that when you're in front of a client, if you want to be trusted, it's less important if they believe what you're saying than it is that they believe that you believe what you're saying. Meaning you are saying things you truly believe in, even if they disagree with them. Like if I'm talking about networking, I might love a, cloth style spine leaf fabric. That might be my thing. They might hate that. That's fine. As long as they believe that I'm saying something that I am being honest about, we can have trust. We don't have to have agreement to have trust. And that's an important distinction, I think. And so I think first part is building that trust. And that goes into a little bit about how I am and the integrity in the online presence. There's nobody that I've ever met that agrees with everything I say. And if I ever met that person, we wouldn't get along at all, right? It's just the way the world works. So what I say is polarizing. People believe it or they don't believe it. Some people agree with statement 1 and disagree with statements 2 through 5, right? That's fine. I don't mind the polarization as long as people come away knowing that what Joe said is what he believes. Because then at the end of the day, they know they're getting honesty from me, even if they don't agree with everything. And the disagreement is where progress happens. I mean, you don't create progress by everybody holding hands and agreeing on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is probably one of the top 10 lessons I've learned from you over the years. And anybody who's been following me for more than 5 minutes knows that I am terrified of posting on social media. It is one of my biggest fear forwards. Every time I do it, I am scared. I am texting my network, like, what am I doing? This is how I get canceled. But what I learned from you is that there's this, it's one, keeping promises to yourself. When you are saying, I'm an honest person, I have good things, I have bad things, I'm an honest person. And when I come out into the world, I want them to see the good and the bad. 2, you're keeping promises to people outside in your network. And so that's what's building that trust. And the other cool thing, so 3, is it becomes this filtration system. And I talk about this in all these workshops, and I've probably brought it up in a ton of lives, where I used to be so scared of offending people when I would post something, and what you taught me is that it's okay. And in some cases, it's wonderful. Sometimes it's, you don't want those people in your life. So you're going to want to kind of push them away. You're not going to want them. Then there's other people that you're going to attract because they're like, you know what? I might not agree with what she's saying, but to your point, she believes what she's saying. And this is the authentic Sabrina. This is who she is. And then the other thing is, I think it creates this sort of empowered culture of other people being willing to speak up. So you've talked about some pretty hard times in your life publicly, and the outreach of other men in service, other leaders that are saying, hey, I'm going through this too, or I'm here for you, has been stunning. I mean, it's, one of the hills I'll die on. I think it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes back to me and in the piece of honesty. And then I think, again, something I've learned from you is one of the things I've realized in kind of my growth and my quitting drinking and a bunch of other things is that men don't always feel like there's a safe space to talk about that and ask for support and the rest. And so for me, because my personality is already out there, because my presence online and the rest is already out there, I'm like, let me go make some more of this space. Let me talk about my problems. Let me talk about my issues. Let me talk about how this, let me say I love you to my guy friends, and let me let other people know, if you need help, come talk to me and we'll figure something out. I'll give you whatever I can give you to support you. Because again, what's it going to hurt me? Doing that is not going to be any worse than the rest of the stuff I say. So I've already kind of created a persona that allowed me to grow into it. And I think that's another important place to add some space and open up people's ability to have conversations that we typically shy away from.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you're so good at. And that's one of the reasons I'm like, we have to get on this live to help other people understand how they can do it, because it's been so transformative in my life. I mean, you've had the chance now to see me at least a decade that I can think of kind of grow into myself and change in some of the most dramatic way. I just never thought that these would be some of the lessons, the hobbies, the friendships, and it all stemmed from these lessons that you taught me. So that's why, first of all, I so appreciate you being this honest person, and even talking about you not drinking anymore and celebrating those things in public, where a lot of times there's people who unnecessarily feel shame around those things, and they don't realize that by being honest with themselves and with others, they're empowering themselves and others. Do you see that? Do you feel that?
Yeah, I think we all get this idea that our problems are unique and ours,
Mhm.
and nobody else is sharing them because people don't talk about them. And at the end of the day, everyone's broken to some extent. You know, it's a spectrum of how broken you are depending on your past, your experience, and your own mental fortitude, right? And so just getting out there and telling people lets them go, okay, I can identify with that. I'm not alone. And that's step one. And then other steps come from that. And I think that's critical. It's critical for us to know that like even me, I'll post something, and today I'm a lot less controversial than I would have been in the past, but I'll post something and I'll walk away, and maybe 10 minutes later, Dread will be sitting on my shoulder going, "You shouldn't have said that. You got to delete it." And I don't. I don't delete posts. They live forever. And if somebody wants to try and cancel me, it takes two to cancel, and I'm staying here. So goodbye. Um, and so, but I will have that dread. I will have that fear, and it's all right, right? When you get into this concept, it's scary to start being polarizing. But what I'll say is if you start in a light way, in a professional way, in a way that you can take off that bite that you're pulling, you'll find so many more advantages. I've found that there are friends that I no longer have or consider close friends. But on the other hand, there are people that would have never been my friend that are closer than those friends were now. I've found the people I really want in my life professionally and personally. I found the people I don't want in my life professionally and personally, because I'm not playing Mr. Vanilla, placid, likable by everybody. I'm being me. And anybody who can see that and still wants to be around me, I have a much deeper connection to than I would have had. And then even to your point of like hobbies and things like that, when you're pretending to be the person everybody wants, you don't have many of those because you don't know which one fits everybody's flavor.
Right.
Right. So as soon as you stop caring so much about that, you find your own flavor and your own value and then intrinsic self-worth and a bunch of other things that come out of that.
Hmm. And you hit on so many good things. I always do this to myself where I wish we had more time, but we'll have to have you on for another one. Because you said a couple things there that are so profound. First of all, knowing that the Joe Onisick sometimes goes, "Oops, I should have posted that," is awesome to know. This is just wild. It's mind blowing. Because I also think a lot of people, and you'd be shocked, some of the biggest CROs, CXO level that are very close friends of ours are very open when it's one-on-one about their imposter syndrome. Not to say that that's what you had, but or that they worry about certain things like their ability to lead or their ability to maybe jump to a new organization or whatever it might be. These conversations happen in our head, but it's not too often where we talk about it and say, "Yeah, I feel that too. Yeah, I go through that too." And just understand, to your point, we're just human. We're not robots. We're supposed to be growing. We're supposed to be learning, and we're not supposed to be perfect. And if we feel like we are perfect and we're not learning and growing, then that's a massive red flag. We should
Right.
reassess, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody's done growing, changing, learning, there's a problem, right? If your opinion isn't changing over time, it's because you're not growing and learning, right? Now,
Yes.
hypocrisy is when you don't acknowledge that it changed. Hypocrisy is not changing your opinion with new information.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. That is so good. I always wondered why, and we do this to politicians, we do this to celebrities, and look, sometimes they ask for it. I'm not saying it's, not warranted sometimes, but I think it's wild that we have even this own expectation of ourselves that we can't change our mind. You
Right.
know this because we've, been friends forever now, is that I'm changing my mind all the time about all kinds of things, drastically changing my opinion. And I don't know if there's ever a limit where you go, okay, well, you're changing your mind too much. But I think that's why I like these healthy, maybe uncomfortable conversations, because it does expand me. That is how I grow. That is when we disagree with something, I go, oh, you know what? Maybe he's got a good point. And then I start researching it.
Yeah, and I think that's critical to people's success. We all have these set of core subconscious beliefs that drive a lot of our behavior. They could be religious based, they could be this based, but they come from our upbringing and they sit in the back of our mind. And our conscious brain doesn't know that they're driving our behavior. So as you really start to dig in and question those, the thing that people worry about is, well, maybe I have to change it. Well, that's your choice. Just know it exists. Because if you've got all these beliefs and they're all set in stone, but you don't know they exist, then anyone who finds them can pull you around like a puppet. As long as you
Mm,
know it exists, you can decide, is this belief correct for me or not? Keep it or change it. But at least you know, and you're now moving yourself out of that automaton robot who can be directed by somebody pushing your buttons.
yeah. Again, how empowering to go, okay. I mean, that's really good. And I wish we had more time because this is such a fascinating conversation. And you really are one of the foremost experts that I've personally witnessed. I knew about your brand before I even knew you as a human because people were talking about it. And I'll get calls. One of my favorite calls. She's a chief of staff, I believe over at VMware. And anyway, any event, she'll say sometimes she's a very good friend of yours, Joe, and will say, people get all hyped up about something that you say online, and she's like, won't they realize that this is Joe? This is what he's doing. So thank you for giving us a little glimpse inside of what's happening and giving us some tools on what to do it, what to do ourselves to kind of be more authentic, be more honest, lean into maybe knowing like, okay, I'm going to be a little scared. I'm going to have a little bit of whatever it might be. And that's okay. Don't delete it, move forward, and keep going and creating this space of empowered people. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I'll give you an actual, you heard it here first.
Ooh, okay.
Everything I post online, I actually want to be challenged. I'm learning in public. I actually want some people to come with contradictory information. And if my opinion should be changed, to change it.
That is something I will tell you a very, very senior executive who loves and adores you said that about you behind your back. And that's why I'm not revealing his name. But he said one of the best things that about you is that you really are willing to change your mind. You really are willing to understand a different point of view and that this is you learning in public. So I can attest to that for sure. And hopefully some people will challenge you, give you a hard time online or, behind the scenes. And certainly another thing of, maybe not challenging you, but reaching out to you. One of the cool things that I get to be a bystander of is how many people reach out to you privately and, share such intimate things or things that they're struggling with, things they're trying to figure out. So for those who maybe don't know how to get a hold of you, is there a good platform? Should they email you? Should they reach out on LinkedIn? If somebody wants to kind of talk more to Joe, how can they do that?
Absolutely. I think from a social media perspective, LinkedIn is all I have. If you want to consider that social media, I think it's basically just an advertising and sales platform at this point. But beyond that, joe@definethecloud.net is an email address. But yeah, reach out. If there's something I can help you with, if there's something I can give you, if you want to know the weirdest career path on earth, I can walk you through mine and give you some advice.
And likewise, I would love to know questions that you have for Joe Onisick as the part two. One of the number one things I get is for Tech Deck Karaoke, people do not believe that you do not see the decks. And I always have to promise them, I promise you he doesn't, on my own word and on Joe's word. And we all know you're an insanely honest and humble person. So with that, you are maybe not before, but you are now. I can attest to that in spades. But yes, I want to know what questions you have for Joe Onisick. Because he's been so honest and transparent with us. So, Joe, thank you for learning with us and thank you for taking your time. I'm excited for what's ahead.
Thanks for having me on. This was a pleasure, and I love your show. So it's great to be a part of it for once.
All right. See you soon. See you next time.